Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's peacetime session. So, currently, we have a few teaching monks who are in Thailand, and our peacetime sessions are currently Thursday, 8 to 9 p.m. with Venerable Sopan, and Sundays, 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. with Venerable Nicholas. And today's peacetime session is about the rust in the mind and how we can do a redox reaction to clear our minds. So I wonder what that will be about. We should find out soon. But for those of you who would like to participate in more meditation throughout the week, we have resources available for you on our YouTube channel, the Inner Peace Peaceful Meditation YouTube channel. You can also go to our website, our Facebook page, and this website called themindgem.com, where it's an online community full of resources. It's a website where there is an online community you can join, find resources for meditation, and practice meditation at any time, because there's so many different events going on. You can just check it out and see what works best for you. And last but not least, in terms of announcements for today, we have our monthly full moon meditation coming up. It will be this coming Thursday, June 24th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. If you're not familiar with it, you can join the full moon meditation on this Zoom link, same link as you use to attend every Sunday, or you can attend via our YouTube channel. Now, without further ado, let's get some yoga in before we sit and listen to Venerable Nicholas's guided meditation and wisdom for the rest of the mind. All right, let's get to stretching.
The next few poses will be done in a standing position. Please move slowly and at your own pace. Keep the sturdy chair nearby for balance if needed. If you find that I'm talking faster than you are moving, please take your time and do fewer repetitions. Take a nice deep inhale and exhale. Place the feet about hips-width apart and grounded on the floor. Lift the toes and spread them nice and wide, and feel the navel pull gently in towards the spine. Push the toes into the floor and lean forward just a little bit. Feel the muscles that keep you steady. Lean back just a little bit and feel the toes come up. Feel the muscles that keep you steady in this position. Now push all four corners of the feet into the floor. Notice the steadiness of mountain pose. Notice how the steadiness of mountain pose feels. On the next inhale, roll the shoulders towards the ears, back and down so the shoulders are slightly open. Let the palms rest open to the side. Inhale and let the arms rise with the palms facing up. Exhale, bend at the elbows and allow the hands to come down the center line. Sink into the knees just a little. Repeat this again. Inhale, lift the arms with the palms facing up. Allow the hands and face to be relaxed. Continue with this movement at your own pace. Breathe as you move and try to coordinate the breath with the movement. On the next breath, lift the arms back over the head. Fingertips point in, palms face up. Imagine that you have candles in the palms of your hands and you do not want to spill them. Turn the fingertips so they face behind you. The palms remain up. Turn the fingertips to the side and then to the front like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again, towards one another, and then forwards like an offering, then out to the side walls. Breathe as you move, up to the top with the fingers facing in again. Let's do this rotation one more time. After the second rotation, allow the hands to cascade down by the side and let them rest. Pause for one slow inhale and exhale. One more breath. Inhale, exhale. This next exercise is excellent for strengthening the spine and gently stretching the muscles of the back, front, and sides. Attempt to make the movement easeful and gentle. We will do these movements with various arm positions. The first arm position is the easiest. Please be sure to stay with the one that feels best for your body. We will demonstrate them all. Take the right hand to the waist and then the left. Roll the shoulders open. And on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale to the center. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale back to the center. Roll the shoulders up, back, and down. And on the next inhale, gently pull the navel towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin and feel a sense of lengthening through the front of the body. On the next exhale, begin to fold gently forward. It does not have to be all the way. Bend the knees slightly. Inhale and rise back to a standing position. Open the left arm to the side. Keep the elbow bent. Leave the right hand on the waist. Inhale. Exhale, lean slightly to the right, and then return back to the center. Bring the left hand down to the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. Exhale and lengthen to the left. Return to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Gently pull the navel in towards the spine. Pull the shoulder blades softly together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward halfway. Inhale back to standing. Open the left arm again. Inhale, and on the exhale, lean to the right. Inhale and return back to the center. Place the left hand on the waist. Lift the right arm. Inhale. On the exhale, lean to the left. Inhale and return back to the center. Roll the shoulders open. Lengthen through the front of the body. Slightly pull the shoulder blades together. Get a small lift in the chin. Exhale and fold forward. Knees slightly bent. Inhale and return to standing in mountain pose. Pause for a moment. Inhale and exhale. For this warrior sequence, attempt to keep the movements gentle and relaxed. If you notice that you are struggling, move the feet closer together. Lower the arms or make the movements smaller. This pose is great for strengthening the legs, respiration, and opening the shoulders. Step the left foot forward just a few feet. The back foot points in at a 45-degree angle. The front knee bends and the hips face front if possible. Inhale, open the arms and bend at the elbows. On the exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards each other. Inhale, open the arms and push the heart softly forwards. Relax the shoulders. Exhale, bring the arms together. Inhale, open the arms to where you feel comfortable. Exhale, relax the arms inwards. Inhale, open and expand. Exhale, contract. Inhale, exhale. Bring the hands back down by the side, return to mountain pose. One breath here. Inhale, exhale. Step the right foot forward. Take a moment, there's no rush. Ground the back foot into the floor. Bend the front knee. When you are ready, open the arms. Inhale. Exhale, bring the hands and elbows towards one another. Inhale, open the arms. This is a relaxed opening in the chest. Exhale, bring the hands and arms towards one another. Inhale, repeat again, creating spaciousness with a full inhale. Exhale, contract and relax the arms slightly. 2 more times at your own pace. Inhale, open. Exhale, close. Let the hands rest down by the side and return back to mountain pose. Pause here for a few breaths.
Welcome back to the 13th online episode of Peacetime, hosted on alternating Sunday mornings by PeacePoint and on alternating Thursday evenings by DIMC Information with myself, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, live streaming from Dhamma International Meditation Center in Azusa, California. Today's session will be about an hour and a quarter long and will consist of a 25-minute talk and 20 minutes of meditation, finishing up with 20 minutes of conclusion, answers to viewer questions submitted in advance, and news updates. Last time you saw me, we looked at mindfulness and the functioning of the meditational mind. The topic for the Dhamma talk today will be rust in the mind. Again, this session I would like to encourage you to send in any questions you have by emailing me at the emailing me at peacepointquestions@gmail.com. That you can see on the slides so that I can have a shot at answering them next time round. Last session we talked about the building blocks of our human being, those 5 things which we have called our psychophysical constituents or aggregates. This session we will be extending our examination of the software of the mind to faults that reside therein, which we give the technical name defilements, referring to their tendency to dirty our mind, or taints, referring to their ability to color the mind, or afflictions, referring to the fact that we do not welcome them, or poisons because they destroy the health of the mind. Defilements in the mind are like ingrained bad habits. They are the things which cause us to act out negative emotions rather than use our common sense. They are the sort of thing that can cause a person to snap, with tragic consequences, like the dramatic example of school shootings in the US, perpetrated sometimes by kids themselves. Although defilements are not always this destructive, the example helps you not to underestimate their power or overlook the possible harm of defilements left latent in the mind. The behavior of people under the influence of defilements is as if they are not in control of their actions. Usually defilements lie latent in the mind, but if they are triggered, by having your buttons pushed or even by hot weather, they will morph themselves into all sorts of unwelcome behavior. Although as meditators we extend a feeling of friendship to everybody in the world, because we believe that everyone is good underneath, we cannot trust the defilements which exist in the human mind and must make every possible effort to rid ourselves of them. Defilements in the mind develop in rather the same way that pure iron or pure steel can develop a rust on it. It's not really the steel itself that has the problem, but the problem comes from an impurity which contaminates the pure substance. And by the way, it reduces the value or potential usefulness of its substrate material. So if you have a lump of pure steel with no rust on it, you can use it for many useful tasks. You can manufacture things or you can mold it into different products. However, once it goes rusty, the steel becomes almost worthless until you can remove the rust. With the mind, we tend to talk about the way defilements affect the mind in much the same way. Meditators understand that the mind, in its undefiled form, is very efficient. It is able to process a lot of information quickly. It is able to have a good sense of awareness and is able to withstand a lot of pressure. But if there are defilements or rust that manage to attach themselves to the mind, then instead of being able to work to its full potential, the mind is compromised and tends to work at only 2 or 3% capacity. So how can we recognize these defilements in ourselves? Is it possible at least to put a name to them? The diseases of the body are characterized by medical professionals into groups such as respiratory, cardiac, infectious, tropical, and so forth. The defilements of the mind, and I'm not talking about psychosis or brain damage here, can be divided into 3 main groups. Those of greed, wanting to get things by dishonest means, hatred, wanting to harm oneself or others or their property, and delusion, inability to understand things as they really are, such as the deluded idea that you are superior or even inferior to everyone else. The defilement which we suffer from most often is greed. All 3 types of defilements, whether they are greed, hatred, or delusion, are similar in that they cause the mind to be darkened and clouded. The minor effects they cause may escalate to cause serious damage, but greed, hatred, and delusion also have distinct characteristics. The first group of defilements responsible for the dulling of the mind is stinginess or greed. Whenever stinginess or greed arises in a person's mind, it will make that person's mind dull. It will constrict the mind through anxiety and fear that that person's wealth will be stolen away. The mind diffused by so many worries will have little strength. It is diminished and irritated. Desire and greed are not very damaging, but they take a long time to recover from. Once we've been thrown off balance by desire, it will be a long time before we can regain our equilibrium. The effects of desire are not very damaging either in spiritual or worldly ways. Even in its extreme form, you would not be put behind bars except for theft or perhaps sexual assault. However, the effects may be long-lasting because they haunt us a long time after the event. For example, heartache is so deep-rooted that it may stay with you for the rest of your life. Materialism also depends on feeding off this sort of defilement. A second sort of defilement is those involving taking advantage of others out of hatred or anger. Unlike the defilement of greed, hatred is very damaging because it doesn't take long to recover from. Under the sway of hatred, there is no end to the violence and cruelty one can do. One can even go as far as to kill one's own teachers or parents. The worldly punishment for violence is severe. You can be thrown in jail or even end up on death row. From the point of view of spiritual retribution, just one temper tantrum can do a lot of damage to your spiritual progress and even your credibility. If you look at all the wars in the world, you can see the damage that hatred can do to lives. The upside of anger is that it is usually short-lived. It is not like the defilements of desire where things like heartbreak can go on for years at a time. By contrast, if there is a situation of anger, often all that's needed is for someone to say sorry, and the tension is gone. Therefore, if you've collected up vengeful situations in your past, be quick to go and settle the disputes by forgiveness, even if they're disputes with those who are your juniors. The third category of defilements is ignorance or delusion. Some people mistakenly think what you don't know can't harm you. Ignorance usually imprisons the mind in darkness and obscures its true potential. But if ignorance is banished from the mind, wisdom will arise in the mind as a brightness to dispel that darkness. Ignorance has the character of being very damaging, and it also takes a long time to recover from. This is the most frightening thing about ignorance. The worldly and spiritual retributions are both serious. If one does something without understanding, one will keep on making the same mistakes again and again, and we don't know that we don't know. By way of illustration, there is a story of a blind man who had to find his way home down a mountain track in the dark. A friend felt sorry for him, so gave him a candle lantern to light his way. "What use will the lamp be to me?" asked the blind man, "because I cannot see the light." "Take the lantern," said the friend. "It will protect you from others who might bump into you by mistake." The blind man walked a little way down the mountain path with the lantern. At first all went well, but before long he found more and more people bumping into him. "Can't you see my lantern?" demanded the man. "Why are you bumping into me like that?" Eventually, a compassionate man came close to him and explained, "Friend, don't protest like that. Didn't you know your candle lantern has blown out?" Ignorance is the same as blindness to the light of the lantern. We don't know what we don't know, and often we can't see the value of the efforts of others to help us either. The real tragedy of ignorance is the way it leaves important questions about the life and the universe unanswered. We have no idea where we have come from, when we will die, if we have somewhere to go after we die, and what the purpose of our life is. When we have no certainty about such questions, we live our life by guesswork. The guesswork leads inevitably to decision-making under the influence of defilements in the mind. Worse still, these three groups, greed, hatred and delusion, can be elaborated by being mixed and combined, like the three primary colors, to obtain the entire spectrum of defilements in between. Ignorance is said to be at the root of the defilements of greed and hatred too, because once we don't know when we will die or when our wealth will disappear, ignorance teaches us to hang on to our possessions and accumulate more and more. It will also influence you never to give anything away to anyone else, even when you have more than you can use. Let's say you're obsessed with getting an expensive car. The underlying reason you want the car is that you are deluded into thinking that owning a new car will bring you lasting happiness. Really, for most people who buy something they've been dreaming about for years, they will find that after a day or two, the novelty wears off, and it's just like anything else, especially if the car happens to break down or get scratched. Then your little bubble of pride will be well and truly burst. There are defilements in the category of greed, all the way from the trivial to the serious. There's an escalation in severity on the spectrum of greed, from deviousness to attraction, from attraction to wanting in excess of your fair share, from wanting in excess of your fair share to wanting to obtain things by dishonest earnings, from wanting to obtain things by dishonest earnings to desiring things in a dishonest way, from desiring things in a dishonest way to open covetousness, and from open covetousness to infatuation. Under the influence of ignorance, if someone takes away something we love, we harbor anger or hatred for them, because we blame them for stealing our happiness. We even hate people for having something we don't have but want, which is how jealousy relates to hatred. Whenever we don't get as much as we want, however, the dismay niggles the mind, not yet anger, but a precursor. From dislike it turns to irritability, from irritability to undirected anger, from undirected anger to directed anger, and eventually from directed anger to vengefulness or spite. Again, coming directly from our ignorance about the nature of reality, there are certain defilements of the mind which hijack the little common sense we had, leading from ignorance to absent-mindedness, from absent-mindedness to conceit, from conceit to adherence to superstitions, from adherence to superstitions to doubt, from doubt to a false view of individuality, from false view of individuality to delusion, and from delusion to wrong view. Because ignorance contributes to greed, hatred, and delusion, it is considered to be the taproot of all the three categories of defilements. It is said that a healthy person may go through life without ever seeing the inside of a hospital, but there is no person who never suffered from some defilements in the mind. Does that sound scary? All of you are seriously sick, I'm afraid, and it's probably why you are listening to this live stream and thinking that meditation can do you some good. These defilements come in many shapes, sizes, and forms. So let's compare the potency of serious, medium, and subtle forms of defilements. A serious case of defilements might mean that something snaps and you go on the rampage with a shotgun when the weather gets too hot. But when the weather is normal, you might lead a normal, harmonious family life. This would not concern the functioning of the brain, but is something that is a latent tendency which suddenly pops up when certain circumstances trigger it. This is a serious case, and hopefully no one listening in, especially in the context of a meditation community, will ever have the misfortune of falling prey to defilements of this seriousness. Even if you're not a meditator, defilements of this level of seriousness will still be of concern to you because they can put you on the wrong side of the law. On the medium level, you would come across things that are a little bit more benign, things that might impede your efforts to bring your mind to the center of the body. Such medium level of defilements in the mind hamper our efforts. In the technical vocabulary of meditation, they are what would be known as hindrances, things such as sense desire, ill will, sleepiness, absent-mindedness, or doubt. These are also defilements of the mind which mean that the mind does not work as well as it should, but they are not as serious as the shotgun example. If you're not a meditator, the chances are you would not care about this level of defilements. But if you do meditate, you need to pay attention to them because they will hinder progress in your meditation. And then we come to the more subtle of the defilements. These are minor defilements equivalent to the thin layer of dust which accumulates on your mirror at home, which if you don't bother polishing your mirror, you wouldn't even know was there in the first place. The equivalent level of defilement would be little niggling peccadillos like minor irritation, discontent, or perhaps not fully understanding yourself. As meditators, we are still concerned with this level of defilements, especially if we are trying to uproot all the imperfections in our personality, and in any case because of the threat that these defilements can proliferate and escalate into larger problems in our lives. So you cannot afford just to let them be, any more than you would leave an undetonated landmine lying buried. If you understand the potential damage they can cause, then you find you have to at least stop them from getting worse, and, if at all possible, to try to overcome them. As a meditator, you start to have the possibility not just to look at the symptoms, but actually to look at what causes the defilements in the first place. If you were to talk, let's say, about emotional intelligence, you would just be telling yourself, don't be so angry, and as a result, become more inhibited as a result of that. But if you're a meditator, you have the possibility not only to deal with the symptoms, but to deal with the viruses or the bacteria that are the root cause of those habits and emotions, to nip anger in the bud. If you were to construct a chart of all the possible categories of rust you can have in your mind, then this might be the result. What is interesting for us in this picture is that greed, hatred, and delusion all originate from ignorance. That all of this takes place beneath the ground, as it is rooted in our subconscious, the part of ourselves that we normally can't see. But above the ground, the part that we can see are the weeds in our conscious mind, which are the symptoms of what lies deeper in the subconscious. So, for example, when greed overcomes the mind, as you can see in the green, it may manifest in serious defilements, the largest leaves, such as being greedy or stingy or openly covetous. The medium-sized leaves are things like being attached to meditation results, wanting to get more than your fair share, being devious, or wanting to get things by dishonest means. The small leaves would include deviousness, lust, unscrupulous earnings, or mere attraction. If you're talking about the anger root, which you can see in the red, then hatred and vengeance are the large leaves. The medium size or the small leaves might be the little niggling things like irritation, spite, or envy, for as long as they are not expressed. From the delusion root, which you can see in the purple, you have the large-sized leaves for things like false view, which is basically erroneous worldview, understanding, or assumptions about the world. It is serious because if you misunderstand reality, there are a lot of things you can do which will upset other people. The smaller delusion leaves would include things like being obstinate or doubtful. The details of the leaves and their antidotes will be what we talk about over the course of the next few sessions. So, having looked at the definition, categories, and potency of defilements, we now turn to look at the stages of mental processing at which the defilements interfere with our mind. Defilements may interfere anywhere in the process, from data monitoring or perception, to filtering, sensory reception, to evaluation, central processing, to cognition and implementation. So let's look at each stage of processing in turn. At the level of sensory reception, our assumptions and prejudices can affect our perception of a situation. We might be trapped in our own point of view and fail to consider how others view the situation, or how the situation as a whole may appear to a casual observer. Often we are biased toward familiar or quantifiable data. The data we base our decisions on may thus be flimsy. Sometimes our assumptions can affect what we see. There's an example of a woman looking for her husband in a crowd, where she assumes he is wearing a green coat. She looks really hard for anyone wearing a green coat, but she can't see him anywhere. After some time, she notices that her husband is standing right next to her, but wearing a red jacket. This is an example of our senses being limited by our attitude or being trapped by our assumptions. Possible solutions for assumptions that affect our sensory registration are to ask ourselves the questions: what data am I focusing on? What other data would I like? And what data am I leaving out? Additionally, we should try to be aware of our prejudices and assumptions and avoid relying on flimsy data or previous knowledge. You also have to learn to base your decisions on reason rather than emotion. At the level of sensory registration, a lack of restraint of the senses can dictate what you perceive and what you filter out of your consciousness. If you are unaware, your defilements will take over the job instead of your mindfulness, and the result might lead to damaging sensory information entering into your mind, further stirring up defilements. An example of lack of restraint of the senses might be returning to things that trigger grief, that remind you of, let's say, a recent bereavement, or being unable to look away from the sight of a horrible accident. A similar weakness can lead to temptation for addicts, who just want more and more gratification via their senses. For example, a person who is unable to have fun unless they're drunk will become dependent on liquor, damaging their mind and their worldview. The solution to overcome defilements at the level of sensory registration is to practice restraint of the senses, not becoming attached to things either as a whole or in part. At the level of central processing, Faulty discretion is the result of the action of defilements at the point where we are considering information. This is a time where we need to have correct models and principles in mind. Lacking these, we may see good as evil or evil as good, for example, turning a blind eye to dangerous behaviors. It will upset the whole calibration of our moral compass. The solution to overcoming defilements at the level of central processing is to associate with wise friends and avoid those who are morally reckless. The good judgment of wise friends will brush off on you. Apart from this, you should try to be a person of principle while gradually calibrating your sense of discretion. At the level of cognition and implementation, there are two important sources of defilement that can cause interference between the decision and the action, namely procrastination and recklessness. Some people can lie in bed all day having decided to get up. Sometimes it can come down to not seeing danger in small things. A person can know all the theory about how laziness is bad, but it doesn't help them to avoid being a lazy person. The defilements impede putting what they know into practice. The solution to overcoming defilements at the level of cognition and implementation is to overcome procrastination by being quick to do things that require speed, being meticulous in things that require detail, and avoiding addiction to vices and roads to ruin. Even though many of these mental taints might be considered minor, no more than rust in the mind, we have to try to get rid of them, because otherwise they will be damaging to us in the future. For most people, the mental taints are so subtle that they feel it doesn't really matter whether they're there or not. They are like tiny bacteria, which can cause much more serious diseases. Often, if we never had tried meditation, it would be difficult to appreciate the dangers of these taints. However, when we dedicate ourselves to mental training, we can start to see that these taints cannot be ignored. We cannot just let them lie, because they will proliferate. And to this end, we now turn to set aside some time for meditation, as this is our most powerful antidote against the proliferation of defilements in the mind. So, at this time we settle ourselves for some meditation, and if you would like to find a comfortable sitting position for yourself now, as you listen to my instructions. So you'd like to start by finding a comfortable position for yourself in meditation. With your right leg on your left leg, your right hand on your left hand, with the index finger of your right hand touching against the thumb of your left hand, with your hands palm upwards on your lap. Find a position for yourself by which you feel alert and yet relaxed, not leaning too far forward nor too far back, not leaning to the right nor to the left. Find a position of poise for yourself. Make sure your breathing and your circulation are natural and unimpeded. And adjust the position of your body to minimize any possible aches or pains. Make sure you're sitting comfortably as possible. And relax every muscle of your body. Relax every muscle, starting with the muscles of your forehead, your eyebrows and eyelids, making sure your eyes are only very gently closed. Never squeeze your eyes closed, but close your eyes gently in just the same way you close your eyes to go to sleep. Make sure there's no heaviness on your eyelids. If you notice that your eyes are closed too tightly, or if there's heaviness on your eyelids, you may need to open your eyes and close them again more gently. Close your eyes in just the same way you close them to go to sleep. And relax the muscles of your face. Relax your neck, your shoulders, both arms, down to the tips of your fingers. Relax your chest, trunk and abdomen, both of your legs, down to the tips of your toes. So that all the way from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, there's no remaining part of your body with any stress or tension anymore. If you notice any tension remaining in your body, then do your best to relax it completely. Because if your body is completely relaxed, you have the feeling as if your body seems to melt away into the atmosphere around you. And you have no further worries about your body anymore. Once your body is completely relaxed, you can turn your attention to relaxing the mind. The easiest and most efficient way to relax the mind is to forget temporarily about every worry and concern in your everyday life. No matter whether it be thoughts of work, friends, family, studies, finances, or any other thing. Don't think about your future and don't think about your past. And keep your mind entirely in the present moment, making your mind light, radiant, spacious and refreshed. Light like a feather, radiant like the morning sun, spacious like the ocean, and refreshed like a flower bud in the early morning dew. If you like, you may like to think of all the merits which you have done in your past, whether it be the merits of generous deeds for the benefits of society around you, donations to the temple, offering of robes, keeping the precepts purely, even meditation and chanting in your daily life. If you think about all the merits you have performed, and in the end, you have a feeling of joy and happiness in the mind, as if the merit moves you to the extent that you feel refreshed inside. We cherish such a feeling of happiness in our mind for a few moments, as if all the happiness seems to come from the center of our body. And when we feel relaxed, both in body and in mind, very gently, using no effort at all, we allow our attention to settle and to center to a point in the middle of our stomach, as if in the center of our stomach was just an empty space. An empty space without any muscles or tissues, without any organs or bones. Just an empty space inside ourselves, like a cavity, a hollow cavity. And now, very gently, without any effort at all, we imagine that the bright, shining sun, which we imagined a few moments ago, is shining from the center of our stomach. A sphere of light shining from the inside of our stomach. We imagine the object with a light and gentle attention as continuously as we can, for as long as we can, without letting the mind wander anywhere else. If the mind wanders to the sounds around us, to the sensations in our body, or to the thoughts in our head, as soon as we realize, we bring our mind back again to the center of our body and continue as before. Our mind may wander 100 times, 1,000 times, but we should pay no attention to the irregularity by which our mind tends to wander. It is our job each time only to bring our mind back again to the center and continue as before. If our bright object disappears, then we can think of a new one. We don't need to worry whether we see the object clearly or not. We just have to accept the object however clearly we can see it. Even if we can see only a part of it, even if we can see only a shadow of it, even if we can only see it not so clearly as with our eyes, we have to accept it as we see it. At the same time, not entertaining any thoughts in our mind. If you find that you have a strain of thoughts coming up in your mind, it may be necessary for you also to use the sound of a mantra. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again, as if the sound of the mantra seems to come like a silent music from the center of your body. Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, Samma Arahang, over and over again. You should check that your attention is only very light at the center. Make sure you don't use too much effort when you are meditating. If you use too much tension when you are meditating, even too much enthusiasm, what you will find is that there is a certain degree of stress on your eyebrows or across your shoulders. If you find that that is true for you, then try to loosen up a little bit more. Try to relax more as you imagine the bright object. However, if you find your mind wandering very easily, or if you feel sleepy in your meditation, then sometimes you need to keep your mind a little bit more firmly at the center of your body. Always keep your mind with the bright object at your center, observing the bright object as continuously as you can, for as long as you can, without letting your mind wander anywhere else. Observe the object without entertaining any thoughts in your mind. Don't feel elated by the pleasing things you see. Don't feel disappointed by the displeasing things that you see. Don't try to resist anything which comes up in the mind. And at the same time, don't have any expectations about what you might see in the future. Simply rest your mind, observing as continuously as you can for as long as you can at the center. Keep your mind always at the center of what you see, the center of the bright sphere of light, or the center of the Buddha image inside yourself, if that's what you prefer. Eventually, as you train the mind, always bringing the mind back to the center, the things that you see in the mind and the things that you feel in the mind will become gradually clearer. Almost like a person who holds a camera with a still hand will get much clearer pictures than a person who holds a camera with a shaking hand. In the same way, as our mind becomes more still and more firmly established at the center, then the images and feelings that we receive via the mind will become clearer to us. However, the thing which is rather strange is that the more firmly the mind becomes established at the center, the less will become the number of thoughts in the mind. The number of thoughts in the mind will become less and less, until eventually there are no remaining thoughts in the mind anymore, and the mind can come to a standstill at the center. A standstill means that the mind rests inside the body without any thinking anymore. Some people think that the mind is nothing without thinking. But if you reach this point in your meditation, you'll find out that in fact the mind without thought is much more powerful than the mind caught up in concepts. The mind that is free of all thoughts can start to draw upon consciousness at a deeper level. Consciousness which we call the gut feeling of the mind, consciousness which we call the inner wisdom of the mind. Once we switch on to these things, then it will be like a light within ourselves, which will start to unravel the mysteries of our life and the world around us. Because wherever there is light, then there is knowledge. Wherever there is knowledge, then no ignorance can creep in. All the other things, whether it's fear, greed, hatred, delusion, no longer have a place to hide themselves anymore. Because once we have understood the reality of the world through inner experience, then no one can persuade us to understand the world differently anymore, because we have seen the nature of the world for ourselves. So now for a few more moments in silence, each thorough meditation, cultivating the mind at the center, with your bright object and the sound of the mantra, for a few more moments in silence until we come to the appropriate time. Always keep your mind at a standstill at the center of the body, as continuously as you can, for as long as you can, without letting your mind wander anywhere else. If you find your mind is attracted away by the sounds around you, sensations in your body, or thoughts in your head, as soon as you realize, always bring your mind back again to the center and continue as before. Cultivate your mind in this way as continuously as you can for as long as you can, with or without the mantra, depending on your own style. Sabba Buddha Nupavena, Sabba Dhamma Nupavena, Sabba Sankha Nupavena, Sattha Sodhi Bhavantu Te. So if you'd like to come to the end of your meditation for today, you can gradually open your eyes again. If you feel at all uncomfortable, then slowly try changing to a more comfortable position and gently finish your practice. So, to return to the subject of defilements or rust in the mind, we now continue by taking a look at some of the difficulties in dealing with defilements. In medical science, they use all sorts of technologies to study the infections in the body. For example, microscopes would be used to identify the infection, study the properties of the infection, and put a name to it. For the mind, it's much the same process. Meditators have to identify the defilement they wish to remove from their own mind, catch the defilement, and remove it. Unfortunately, this is made more challenging by at least 3 obstacles to removing defilements from the mind. Firstly, defilements are hard to see. The problem with pinpointing defilements in the mind is that defilements are even smaller than the mind itself. Most people cannot even see their own mind, let alone the defilements in the mind. Unable to see their own defilements, usually all we can detect about the working of such defilements is the effects they have on our behavior. Therefore, dealing with the defilement directly is a delicate task, to say the least. Secondly, we take our defilements for granted. Our mind is so used to being steeped in defilements that it is even hard to notice the effect they are having on us. We feel that they are like a legitimate part of our personality. It is like a person with athlete's foot who half enjoys having an itch to scratch. Or it's like a disfigured beggar who relies on the disfigurement to procure donations. In the same way, we are used to the defilements in our own minds. If anyone does something to annoy us, we feel justified to express our anger in order to teach them a lesson. We skip the niceties out of fear that next time round they will not think twice before annoying us again. We may even go as far as to be proud of our defilements. If we manage to rip someone off instead of feeling guilty, we plan to take them for even more the next time round. We are as used to our defilements as a fish is used to water. If anyone attempts to take a fish out of water, it will struggle with all its might to get back into the water again. In the same way, people are so used to defilements, they will go to great lengths to hang on to them. Try taking the bottle away from an alcoholic. They will tell you, "You can't do that. That bottle is my life." We are all the same to a greater or lesser extent. When the alarm goes off in the morning, how many people hit snooze, turn over, and go back to sleep? How many times have you found yourself turning on the TV, even though you know there's nothing on that you want to see? Thirdly, the way to remove defilements is hard to fathom. Some people know that defilements exist in the mind, and they know that the mind takes defilements for granted, but they don't have any idea how to overcome those defilements. They know they are lazy, but they don't have any idea what to do about it. They know they shouldn't hit on their neighbor's wife, but they cannot get over their obsession. They have no idea how to overcome the temptation. All they can think is, why does it have to happen to me? Although defilements may be small, abstract, and hidden away in the deepest recesses of our minds, they cannot fail to have dire effects on our everyday lives. To give a practical example, defilements can show up in the workplace, especially for those who take decisions in an unjust way. Sometimes management loses their employees' trust because they let the defilements of bias interfere with their decisions. There are 4 reasons why decisions can be biased as a result of defilements: because of favoritism, because of hatred, because of ignorance, and because of fear. We often find the first 2 in the workplace. Bosses tend to treat employees who are diligent and capable better than those who are lazy or incompetent. A boss may be prejudiced by fear when objecting to bad behavior by someone who might affect their career, letting them off lightly for fear that their own prospects of promotion will be damaged. Prejudice under the influence of ignorance comes when a boss acts upon hearsay instead of hearing both sides of a story. To overcome such prejudice, as a better boss, they would have to become more conscious of the way in which their feelings and emotions affect the way they decide things. It's difficult enough to make a success out of the tasks we do alone when under the influence of defilements in our mind. But when we come to work with others, because the defilements of no 2 people are the same, there will be many more potential conflicts of interest to contend with as a result. Thus, although the possibilities of achievement are less when working alone, it often seems easier than working as part of a team. We definitely need more patience to work as a team because we have to train ourselves to see a situation from many points of view instead of simply reacting to it selfishly. A good example of aggravation in the workplace caused by defilements comes when a boss has a delicate task of giving feedback when employees are learning a new task. If the boss is not aware of the way in which their own defilements interact with the point of view of the trainee, they might appear excessively fussy or patronizing. In the same way, when we first start a new job, our boss or trainer needs to take good care of us, gradually teaching us more about our work until we can rely on our own experience. However, as time goes on, what do we feel like if we are already competent and our boss is continually micromanaging our work, like they were on our first day? Usually we would feel irritated. At first we may feel respect for the boss, but after a while, if they are still patronizing, our respect for them would deteriorate. There's a good parable for this in the staking out of sapling trees. A sapling is weak and easily blown down by the first gust of wind. Thus, when it's young, it must be secured to a stake until it takes firm root for itself. At this stage, the stake is a necessity. When the tree is more fully grown, being fixed to a stake may no longer be as necessary because probably the tree can support itself in the face of strong winds. And when the tree is full grown, the stake will definitely be redundant. If we are the boss, before offering advice, we should first consider whether it is going to be necessary or redundant in the light of the employee's level of knowledge and capability. In the case of the sapling or a full-grown tree, it's not so hard to tell. But what about a tree which is halfway grown to maturity? It is in this area that the employees and the boss will see things differently. Employees think the advice is redundant, but the boss thinks it's necessary. In such a case, the boss should tell the employee what they want achieved, but not how to achieve it, and leave the employees to make their own mistakes. This is what is called a learning culture in the workplace. Two conditions for this to work are that the boss will need to stay on the sidelines in case something goes wrong, and the task allocated should not be the sort of work which will have catastrophic consequences if it fails, because in the end it's the boss who will have to take the blame. Employees who see advice as redundant are usually overconfident. However, when the wind blows and the branches are bent, leaves are torn away and the branches break. In the end, they will start to see the obstacles for themselves and start to feel ill at ease. They will begin to realize that the boss's advice was not quite so redundant, but necessary to the success of the task. At this point, the boss should come back and help. The boss shouldn't kick them when they're down, but use this opportunity to show their compassion by treating the problem as nothing special. In the end, the gap between the original difference in view between the employees and the boss will diminish. Thus, any boss who wants to command respect must avoid unnecessary interference. As we've already mentioned, defilements are basically the residue of bad habits. As shown in the diagram, defilements originate from unskillful life choices, which worsen the quality of the mind, leaving a residue of defilements in the mind. Having more defilements in the mind will feed back into worse life choices in the future. By the opposite token, skillful life choices will lead to better quality of mind, leading to a reduction of the defilements in the mind, and eventually feeding back into even better life choices. Even speaking statistically, the more we've done something in the past, the more likely we will be to repeat it in the future. If all our actions in the past are good and virtuous things, then that will be our good luck. However, for most of us, there are bad habits too. The more we give in to bad habits, the greater the chance we will relapse further. If we try to resist bad habits, we may feel it takes a lot of effort. Although we may not see the source of such resistance at its root, we can know that what we're up against are the defilements. To give a superficial example, if we punch someone on the nose, then it increases the chance they will punch us back at some time in the future. What you might not have considered, though, is that it will also increase the likelihood that we will punch other people too in the future. We are that much less in control of ourselves. The defilements are the little voice which persuaded us to punch them in the first place, even though it may be contrary to our better judgment. Defilements encourage negative intentions to arise in the minds. They block positive intentions from arising. If we are off our guard, they will turn the negative intentions into negative comments that escape from our mouths as words. The retribution becomes that much worse because our speech is then open to public scrutiny. If we are still off our guard, negative words may go further to become negative actions such as hitting others. The methods for overcoming defilements at various levels will be part of the subject matter of future sessions. However, for today we simply need to remind ourselves that as meditators we have two important duties concerning the defilements of the mind. Firstly, to protect ourselves from collecting additional defilements, and secondly, to find ways to remove the defilements that already exist in the mind. If, however, we resist the action of defilements by resisting their persuasion, or by filling our mind only with positive thoughts, or by stopping the proliferation of negative intentions before they get as far as negative words or actions, it will serve to burn up those defilements, and the next time round it will loosen the hold those defilements have over us. In conclusion, before we may have thought of emotions as being just a part of our personality, laughing or crying a lot. But from a meditator's perspective, emotions are a much broader spectrum than that, not just happy, sad, but a lot of shades of emotion in between, and even different dimensions entirely that can be traced back to rust in the mind of various categories. As meditators, we need to be able to classify them and deal with them at the roots, so that we can examine ourselves for the presence of these forms of rust in our own minds and know where to draw the line, while knowing about the ways in which meditation can help us overcome these. So, now we come to the part of the live stream where we try to answer some of the questions sent in by viewers. My question today is another one from Kathleen of Glendora. Here comes the question. How can we prepare our minds to be mindful in our sleep? More specifically, how can we prepare our minds to create good merit in our dreams? Hi Kathleen, thank you for your question. Last time, just before the meditation session, I did mention that illness, dying, dreams, and meditating are times when the mind truly comes into its own. But generally, mindfulness is something you need to train yourself in during your waking hours, because this is a time when you are fully in control of your mind and when your intentionality can interact directly with the law of karma to create karmic outcomes which are positive for our future. The time when we are asleep is not a time of high priority for our spiritual training. Nonetheless, seeing as you ask, there is some advice which you can apply to your sleeping hours. The advice for a better night's sleep is to spread loving kindness for a few minutes sitting up before lying down to go to sleep, and putting your mind at the center of your body before you go to sleep. Also, there are some resources for how to upgrade the quality of normal dreams into dreams of a quality known as lucid dreams, where you are aware you are dreaming while actually having the dream. Apparently, you can upgrade the quality of your dreams to lucid dreams by the practice of dream-induced lucid dreams, DILD for short. You can Google that, where you develop the ability to do cool things to take back control of your dreams, such as forcing yourself in your dream to look away from something and then look back again. Similarly, you might consider keeping a dream diary. Anyway, the main point from me is, instead of worrying about your dreams, you can always more usefully focus your efforts on developing mindfulness while you are awake, and what comes through in dreams, or by extension when you are sick or dying, should just be regarded as a bonus. So let me finish up with a couple of news updates, one about the upcoming Katina ceremony at the temple, and the other my usual PSA about the availability of meditation teaching in English. For today, let me finish up with a quick mention about temple support and a news updates about the availability of meditation teaching in English. Those of you who like to visit the temple in Azusa to bring offerings, please be informed that we are still using the offering site in the parking lot next to the main temple building between 10 and 11 a.m. each day. If you have trouble with the passcode or at the gate or wish to visit at a different time, please call Jenny on 562-716-2961. There will be at least one monk on standby in PPE to receive your offering and give you a short blessing. English-speaking monks will be on duty on most weekdays. A short ceremony for 5 precepts, meditation and a blessing are given on the weekends starting at 10:45 a.m. And for those unable to visit in person, all the other ways of accepting money transfers to DIMC are still available, whether it be mailing checks, bank transfer, Zelle, or Venmo. Needless to say, the whole temple would like to rejoice in the merits of all continuing to take the opportunity to support the temple in this way. Meditation continues to be valuable in tackling lockdown fatigue, and in this respect, despite the relegation to the yellow tier here at the temple, we are still in a position where we have no face-to-face teaching sessions for the interim. You can, however, continue to access Dhamma teachings in English through several convenient channels. For aficionados of Zoom meetings, you can access the Inner Peace channel content by joining the Zoom channel ID 970-1192-2337, meeting passcode 072, and as you will see from the updated program schedule on the slide, Content is available for most of the day now, 7 days a week, and brings together all the usual programming from our temple with English and Spanish content from various branches across the US. The times shown on this particular slide are for the West Coast. For content local to Azusa, you can continue to follow teachings at the YouTube channel called Peace Point Meditation or the Facebook page of Peace Point Meditation. For those of you who are particularly interested in my talks, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, which I have set up in my own name. And according to the current Peace Point schedule, every Sunday morning you have got me with live material and archive material on alternating Sundays. Venerable Sopon appears every Thursday evening. The Monday and Friday Peace Silence sessions from Peace Point have been postponed for the interim owing to even more teacher monks being away in Thailand. Families listening in may be interested in the special show for children in English known as Shining Stars that goes out between 6 and 6:30 p.m. every Monday evening with bedtime stories and meditation short enough to keep the attention of younger listeners. Outside of the live streams and on-demand programming, you can also download the Mind Gem app for free, allowing you to listen to meditation and Dhamma talks in English on your cell phone, even when you are offline. It now has push notifications to keep you up to date with upcoming activities on the Inner Peace channel. So this session we have looked at the topic of rust in the mind. For my next session online with you, which will, fingers crossed, we'll be moving on to look at the subject of the defilements of greed and contentment as its antidote. For good measure, I would like to remind viewers, even better than posting thank you or great talk or sadhu in the broadcast comments, you can email your questions about meditation or what you've heard in the lecture to the address peacepoint.questions@gmail.com, as you can see spelled out in the slide. And I'll do my best to answer these on my next session. In the meantime, try to stay healthy, avoid recklessness or complacency in the face of the virus, maintain a positive mood, speak only positive words, forgive others, extend good wishes to others, and meditate daily. Try to keep up with the working of defilements in your mind and develop freedom from defilements in the ways I have suggested. So for today, this is me, Phra Nicholas Thanissaro, signing off for this session. So long, folks, and stay safe.